That was a beautiful song, and thank you, Angelina. Vulnerability. Just the sound of that word is enough to make grown people cry. Dancing in public, asking for help, sharing our art, walking into a new place as ourselves and only ourselves. And yet, all the best hero stories are about vulnerability. Because it is, in the words of Howard Thurman, the thing that we desire most in life, to feel thoroughly and completely understood and loved. And unless we are willing to know ourselves, to let ourselves be authentically known, how can we feel love and be loved? There's this line, it goes something like this: I gotta go see about a girl. Can anyone tell me what this line is from? Yes. Yes, Robin Williams. Yes. Well, thank you for being vulnerable and speaking up. Good Will Hunting, with a Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter score of 97%. Folks, it is hard to get a better hero story than that. Good Will Hunting tells us the story of a rather rough around the edges hero, and who can relate to that? He is the victim of childhood trauma that shapes his life. Can I get another amen? And this unlikely hero meets another unlikely hero, a middle-aged man who is grieving his beloved and has decided to check out on life. And I bet we could have a really good showing of hands for all of us who reached middle life facing losses and disappointments, wondering who we are anymore, and built up protective armor around our hearts and souls. And as most good Western stories do, this story has a happy ending. After taking us through the relatable plot, where both our unsung heroes dig deep into their personal stories, find the courage to know themselves and let others see them for who they are, Will, our young hero, decides to follow in our older hero's footsteps, risking the fear and shame of rejection for the chance to know himself through loving someone else, to know and be known. And Will leaves town to go see about a girl. Who of us have done that? Gone to go see about a love, go see about a job, go see about a new place to live. Take your life and throw it. Moment of spirit, let's give that a space. All right. All right. Yes, to take our lives and throw it up in the air and see where it lands. Sometimes it is splat on the floor. And that, my friends, that is courage. It is courage because it is allowing ourselves to be at our most vulnerable and trusting that somewhere deep within us, I will be okay. I will be better than okay. Author and scholar C.S. Lewis tells us, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries and avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. We, sitting here, know that cold, dark place. It is what brings us into this room, on Zoom, and in our hearts. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw from sources as diverse as science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience. Looking to our humanist source of inspiration, we ask, what is vulnerability exactly? Researcher and social scientist, author Dr. Brene Brown, boy, that is just not working for me. Let me move that a little bit. About to have another crash. Okay. Author and Dr. Brene Brown defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Let us acknowledge the discomfort this idea raises to accept uncertainty, to take risk, and to expose our tender and timid hearts to others. Why would any of us take such a risk on vulnerability? Dr. Brene Brown answers this for us. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, it is the way. So who's terrified? We are sitting here in church hearing that the way to our spiritual awakening is right through vulnerability. Let us breathe deeply for a moment. Let us open our hearts and let that settle in deep within us. As Unitarian Universalists, we also reach towards our heritage of Jewish and Christian teachings, which call on us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbor as ourselves. In our meditation, we contemplated the first three Beatitudes in the Gospel of Matthew. Let us contemplate them again. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. So we wonder together, what are these Beatitudes? Blessed are they that, and a list of vulnerable and undesirable positions follow. Perhaps you're thinking as I, thank you, I'll pass on those blessings. But pause with me for a moment, let us take a second look. Blessed are you who are poor. In this country, in this culture, there is not much more vulnerable or shameful of a position than being broke, really broke. We elevate independence and self-sufficiency. Where is the blessing in the powerlessness and shame of broke? Well, let me say, I've lived in a $750,000 mansion, and I've lived in a mud house in a rural village where we used kerosene lamps, an outhouse, and fetched water from the river. Could it be I was closer to the kingdom of heaven in Africa, sitting outside drinking a cup of tea, listening to the crickets, running screaming and laughter through fields of sugarcane and climbing a guava tree? Ask any of the campers and backcountry enthusiasts with us here today, and I think I saw somebody with things on their belt, so maybe that's backcountry enthusiast, how close they feel to the kingdom of heaven falling asleep under the stars. And what of poverty? I've also used food stamps and WIC. Who else can proudly say the same? When we lose the need to control because we can't control, we are gifted a world that opens up just a little wider. The intangible becomes our kingdom. We connect with the universe when that's all we have left. So maybe in the vulnerability of releasing the shame of failing to meet social expectations, in embracing the authenticity of everyone's need for community, we find blessing too when we are poor. And what about mourning? How can there be any blessing in tears? Again, pause with me for a moment to look closer. What do we mourn? We mourn what we love. Of all the blessings in our lives, the greatest is the blessing to love and be loved. So yes, loved community members gathering here, it It is the greatest blessing to mourn, to let the liquid love fall from our eyes, knowing that in that love was also the laughter that wrung from our lips. And sometimes we mourn the change from what was to what will be. Poet and author Courtney Peppernell says we grow old and we always lose something. A lover, an old friend, a way of being. But shedding layers isn't always a bad thing. Remove what doesn't help you grow. Instead, let light and love in. And that is the single greatest act of vulnerability, the courage to love. To accept the blessing of mourning and to go back out there and love again. The blessing to know and to be known. Blessed are the meek. Meekness is about knowing ourselves deeply enough to find the power within our own stillness. The humility to love and to accept our yearnings, our tender places yet to heal, and to open ourselves in empathy to those who walk next to us. When we accept ourselves and our fellow wanderers, we do inherit the earth because this whole place becomes our playground. Drawing on Eastern teachings, one of our Unitarian Universalist sources of inspiration, we return to the opening words of the 61st verse of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. A great country is like the lowland toward which all streams flow. It is a reservoir of all under heaven, the feminine of the world. The female overcomes the male with stillness by lowering herself through her quietness. So if a great country lowers itself before a small one, it wins friendship and trust. And if a small country can lower itself before a great one, it will win over that great country. The one wins by stooping, the other by remaining low. The yin and the yang, the feminine and the masculine in balance. When we lower our defenses, set aside our shame, our need to control, when we step into our power of vulnerability, this powerful feminine energy, we invite others to trust us, to come into relationship with us, to take a chance with their vulnerability, to be fearlessly authentic. Because there is something in each of us that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in others and in ourselves. Brené Brown tells us vulnerability is life's great dare. It's life asking, are you all in? Can you value your own vulnerability as much as you value it in others? Answering yes to these questions is not weakness. It is courage beyond measure. It is daring greatly. It's the stuff our hero stories are made of, the courage to throw everything to the wind, to risk shame and rejection, and to go see about a girl. So who is the girl in your life? Which small acts of vulnerability brought you here today? Maybe it was the courage to walk through the church door and be in a room where you used to sit with someone you loved who isn't here. Maybe it was reading a book in front of a room full of new faces for the first time, or singing in the community choir. Maybe it was taking a look at the ways you shelter yourself from being truly seen and committing to open up in vulnerability to be fearlessly authentic, to let go of who we ought to be and to embrace who we are. For all the ways each of us grappled with our insecurities and showed up today, I celebrate our courageous vulnerability. Look around you, look inside. What are the ways you can press into those places behind the shame, sheltered by the protective walls, and show up and dare greatly with us? Could it be by walking up to a person different from yourself and sticking out your hand in greeting? Could it be signing up to teach our youth for a Sunday RE class, stepping outside of your comfort zones and flexing your play muscles? Kara will be happy to remind us just how much fun it is to play with our youth. Later this year, we will be offering a new small group. Worship is a spiritual practice. Perhaps your courageous act of vulnerability is joining the group to listen to your soul, to hear the call to worship within yourself, and then sharing it with all of us. Sufi poet and mystic Rumi tells us, there is a soul within your soul. Seek it out, there is treasure. In your mountain, seek it out. A mystic in motion, if that is what you are. Don't seek out there, seek inside. The journey into our inner being is the longest and hardest any of us can take. And yet, it is only in doing that, in embracing and knowing ourselves, that we can find what it is we all seek. As Howard Thurman wrote, to take my guard down and look out around me and not feel that I will be destroyed with my defenses down. To feel completely vulnerable, completely naked, completely exposed, and absolutely secure. That is courageous vulnerability. That is wholehearted and fearless authenticity. That is to know and be known. Let us listen to Victoria as she invites us with her song into brave vulnerability.